In the heart of a picturesque suburban neighborhood, where the lawns were always perfectly manicured and the houses stood like proud sentinels of tranquility, John was planning the event of the year. The anniversary party he was organizing for his wife, Sarah, was set to be a grand affair. Every detail, from the elegant invitations embossed with gold foil to the carefully curated guest list, had been painstakingly crafted by John himself. John was the kind of man others aspired to be. Tall, with a gentle demeanor that put everyone at ease, he was known for his unwavering dedication to his wife and family. Friends and family often remarked on how lucky Sarah was to have such a caring and thoughtful husband. John was the type who remembered anniversaries with thoughtful gifts, planned surprise weekend getaways, and always made sure Sarah's coffee was just the way she liked it every morning. As he sat at the kitchen table, reviewing the seating arrangement for the party, a small, almost imperceptible frown creased John's forehead. The room was filled with the soft glow of evening light filtering through the windows, casting long shadows that danced on the walls. His fingers tapped lightly on the table as he considered the placement of each guest, ensuring that everyone would feel comfortable and welcome. But beneath this exterior of meticulous planning and thoughtful attention, there was something more, a weight that pressed on John's chest, a tension that had been building quietly over the past few months. He knew. The evidence had been subtle at first. A late-night text, a change in Sarah's demeanor, the lingering scent of a cologne that wasn't his. John had noticed it all, though he had kept his observations to himself, masking his pain with a calm and composed facade. To anyone else, John appeared as devoted and loving as ever. He still greeted Sarah with a warm smile when she returned home from work, still kissed her forehead gently before bed, still planned this extravagant celebration to honor their years together. But his mind was already racing ahead to the night of the party, to the moment when the truth would be laid bare for all to see. For now, though, John remained the perfect husband, carefully placing the last name card on the table and allowing himself a small, satisfied smile. Everything was in place. All that was left was to wait. The discovery came one ordinary evening, when John's world shifted from its familiar orbit. Sarah was in the shower, her phone left carelessly on the nightstand, the screen alight with a new message. It wasn't like John to snoop. He trusted Sarah implicitly, had always believed in the sanctity of their marriage, but something compelled him to look. The message preview caught his eye. "Can't wait to see you again, love. Last night was amazing." A cold dread settled in his chest as he unlocked the phone, his hands trembling slightly. The message was from Mark, a name he recognized all too well, Sarah's co-worker, someone she had mentioned in passing with casual indifference. John's heart pounded as he scrolled through the conversation, each message more damning than the last. The texts were laced with affection, the kind that should have been reserved for him, but instead, they revealed a relationship that had clearly crossed boundaries long ago. It wasn't just words. John found photos, selfies of the two in intimate settings, their faces close, smiling, with the ease of lovers who had spent many secret moments together. And then there were the videos, short clips that left no room for doubt, capturing them in stolen moments of passion, whispering promises of a future John was never meant to be part of. For a long time, John just sat there, staring at the screen, the evidence of his wife's betrayal burning into his mind. A wave of nausea hit him as the full reality set in. The woman he had loved so deeply, the life he had built with her, all of it felt like a lie. He wanted to scream, to confront her immediately, to demand answers, but he didn't. Instead, John took a deep breath, his mind already shifting gears from devastation to something colder, more calculated. As the initial shock wore off, John felt a dark resolve take hold. Confronting Sarah now, in the heat of the moment, would only give her the chance to deny, to manipulate, to twist the narrative. No. This situation called for a different approach, one that would ensure she felt the full weight of her betrayal in the most public way possible. Over the next few days, John began to craft his plan. He continued to play the role of the loving husband, careful not to arouse suspicion. He complimented Sarah, made her favorite meals, even discussed the upcoming anniversary party with the same enthusiasm he had shown before. But beneath this veneer of normalcy, he was setting the stage for a dramatic revelation. John decided to extend an invitation to Mark under the pretense of wanting to meet more of Sarah's friends from work. He crafted a friendly message, one that betrayed none of the knowledge he now held. "Hey Mark, I'd love for you to come to our anniversary party next weekend. Sarah speaks highly of you, and it would be great to have you there." Mark accepted the invitation without hesitation, blissfully unaware of what awaited him. John couldn't help but feel a grim satisfaction as he received Mark's enthusiastic response. Everything was falling into place. With each passing day, John's resolve hardened. He gathered the evidence, screenshots, photos, videos, and began planning the moment when he would reveal it all. There would be no escape for Sarah or Mark. They would be exposed, humiliated, and left to face the consequences of their actions in front of everyone they knew. But for now, John remained outwardly calm, continuing to organize the party with meticulous care. He knew that the final act of this painful drama would be the most satisfying. As he watched Sarah laugh and go about her day, blissfully unaware of the storm that was coming, John's heart no longer ached. Instead, it was filled with a cold, determined purpose. The stage was set and the players were in position. All that was left was to wait for the curtain to rise. The day of the party dawned bright and clear, the kind of day that promised nothing but joy and celebration. John had spared no expense in transforming their home into a breathtaking venue for the anniversary celebration. Twinkling lights draped over the patio, elegant floral arrangements adorned every table, and soft music played in the background, creating an atmosphere of warmth and festivity. Guests began to arrive in the early evening, greeted by the gentle glow of lanterns lining the pathway to the front door. John was the picture of composure as he welcomed friends and family with a warm smile and a firm handshake. He moved effortlessly from guest to guest, making sure everyone felt comfortable and appreciated. His eyes, however, kept drifting back to Sarah, who was basking in the attention of their guests, laughing and chatting as though everything were perfectly normal. Sarah had no idea what was coming. She was dressed in a stunning midnight blue dress, her hair styled to perfection, and her face glowing with the excitement of the evening. To anyone looking in from the outside, she appeared to be the happiest woman in the world, celebrating another year of marriage with the man who adored her. But John knew the truth, and that knowledge simmered beneath his calm exterior, waiting for the perfect moment to be unleashed. As the night progressed, the house filled with laughter and conversation. Guests mingled, glasses clinked, and the air was thick with the smell of gourmet food and expensive champagne. Mark arrived fashionably late, as if he were a guest of honor rather than an interloper. John greeted him with a firm handshake and a smile that didn't reach his eyes. "It's great to finally meet you, Mark," John said, his voice smooth and welcoming. "Sarah's told me so much about you." Mark, oblivious to the underlying tension, grinned and offered his congratulations on their anniversary. "You're a lucky man, John," he said, his tone casual, as if the words held no deeper meaning. "Yes," John replied, his smile never wavering. "I am." The evening continued without a hitch, the party in full swing. John made sure to keep the mood light, ensuring that Sarah and Mark felt completely at ease. He joked with his friends, clinked glasses with his in-laws, and even stole a few dances with Sarah, his hand resting lightly on the small of her back as they moved to the rhythm of the music. But beneath it all, there was a tension that only John felt, a coiled spring of emotion waiting to be released. As the night wore on, the guests began to gather in the living room, where a large screen had been set up for a special presentation. John had hinted earlier that he had a surprise in store, something to commemorate their years together. Sarah's eyes sparkled with anticipation as she took her place beside John, her hand slipping into his. She had no idea what was about to happen, but she was confident that whatever it was, it would only affirm the love she believed they still shared. John cleared his throat, and the room fell silent, all eyes on him. He began his speech with words that were heartfelt and sincere, speaking of love, loyalty, and the importance of trust in a marriage. His voice was steady, his tone warm, as he recounted the early days of their relationship, the milestones they had achieved together, and the love they had shared. "As we gather here tonight to celebrate another year of our marriage," John said, his gaze sweeping over the room, "I am reminded of the vows we took, promises to love, honor, and cherish each other, through good times and bad. I've always believed that trust is the foundation of any strong relationship, and without it, there's nothing." The guests nodded in agreement, many of them moved by his words, unaware of the dark turn the evening was about to take. John paused, his eyes now locked on Sarah, who was smiling up at him with a mix of pride and affection. He squeezed her hand gently before continuing. So tonight, in the spirit of that trust, I'd like to share something very special with all of you. Something that I believe truly captures the essence of our marriage. With a click of the remote, the lights dimmed, and the screen flickered to life. The guests leaned forward, expecting to see a montage of happy memories, perhaps photos of vacations, holidays, or family gatherings. But as the first image appeared on the screen, a hushed silence fell over the room. The screen showed a series of text messages, intimate, explicit, and unmistakably damning. Sarah's smile froze on her face, her hand slipping out of John's as she stared at the screen in horror. The guests exchanged confused glances, not yet understanding what they were seeing. Then the photos appeared, images of Sarah and Mark in various stages of undress, in settings that were far too private for a married woman. The shock rippled through the crowd like a wave, gasps and murmurs filling the room as the truth began to sink in. John's voice broke the silence, calm and clear. For those of you who don't know, this is Mark, Sarah's co-worker, and, as it turns out, her lover. The room erupted in chaos. Shocked exclamations, whispers, and the sound of Sarah's desperate attempts to explain, her voice trembling as she tried to speak. But John wasn't listening. He simply stood there, watching as the betrayal that had shattered his world was laid bare for everyone to see. He had played his part perfectly, and now, as the guests turned their judgmental eyes on Sarah and Mark, John felt a strange sense of peace wash over him. The storm had finally broken. As John continued his toast, the warmth in his voice gradually took on a sharper edge, one that only Sarah seemed to notice. Her smile, which had been bright and carefree at the start of the evening, began to falter. She shifted uncomfortably in her seat, her eyes darting between John and the expectant faces of their guests. Something was wrong. She could feel it, a subtle change in the air, like the calm before a storm. John's words grew more deliberate, each one laced with a hint of something darker. Trust, he said, his gaze now fixed on Sarah, is the most fragile thing in a marriage. It can take years to build, but only moments to destroy. He paused, letting the weight of his words settle over the room. Sarah's breath caught in her throat. She could feel the eyes of their friends and family on her, waiting for John to continue. But all she could think about was the sudden chill in his tone. Her heart pounded in her chest as she tried to convince herself that she was imagining things, that there was no way John could know about her secret. But deep down, a growing dread gnawed at her. John's smile was thin as he addressed the room. Tonight, I wanted to share something special with all of you, something that truly captures the essence of our marriage. You see, in any relationship, it's important to be honest, to show your true self, even when it's difficult. So, I've prepared a little presentation, a way to express my gratitude for all the love and support you've shown us over the years. With that, he picked up a remote control and dimmed the lights. The guests leaned in, expecting a heartfelt montage of memories. But as the first image appeared on the screen, a cold, stunned silence descended over the room. The screen displayed a series of text messages, unmistakably intimate and far too revealing for a married woman. The words, "I can't stop thinking about you," and "last night was perfect," leaped out from the screen, messages that Sarah had sent to Mark. Her face drained of color as she stared in horror, her worst fears realized. Sarah's mind raced. How did John find out? How long had he known? Her eyes flickered to Mark, who was seated across the room, his face a mask of shock and disbelief. He hadn't expected this. Not tonight, not ever. John's voice cut through the silence like a knife. For those who don't know, these are messages between Sarah and Mark, her co-worker, and as you can see, their relationship goes beyond just work. He clicked the remote again, and the screen changed to photos. Intimate, compromising photos of Sarah and Mark together. Some were in places John recognized, others were clearly in hotel rooms or other locations far from home. The images told a story of betrayal that left no room for doubt. The room was deathly silent, save for the quiet gasps and murmurs that began to ripple through the crowd. The guests, who had moments ago been toasting to the couple's enduring love, were now staring in disbelief at the evidence of Sarah's infidelity. Some turned to look at her with wide eyes, others whispered to each other, their shock quickly morphing into judgment. Sarah's hands trembled as she tried to find her voice. "John, she began, but the words caught in her throat. She looked around the room, desperate to escape the eyes that now bore into her. Seeing her not as the loving wife, but as the unfaithful woman who had betrayed the man standing beside her. Mark, too, was frozen in place, unable to meet anyone's gaze. His face was pale, his jaw clenched as the realization of what had just happened sunk in. He had been caught, exposed in the most public and humiliating way possible. There was no escaping the reality of the situation. John remained calm, almost detached, as he clicked through the images, each one more damning than the last. When the final image faded from the screen, he turned to the guests, his expression one of cool resolve. "I thought it was only fair that everyone here knows the truth. After all, trust is the foundation of any relationship, and without it, what do we really have?" The room was silent, the weight of his words hanging in the air. No one knew what to say, how to react to the devastation that had just unfolded before them. All eyes were on Sarah and Mark, who were now the subjects of pity, scorn, and whispered condemnation. John took a deep breath, feeling a strange sense of relief wash over him. The truth was out, the facade had been shattered, and Sarah's betrayal was no longer his burden to bear. He had exposed her for what she truly was, and in doing so, he had freed himself from the pain that had consumed him for so long. Without another word, John stepped away from the front of the room, leaving Sarah and Mark to face the consequences of their actions alone. The storm he had unleashed had torn through the room, and as he walked away, he felt the weight lift from his shoulders. He was done, and there was no looking back. The room was still heavy with the shock of revelation, the air thick with the unspoken tension of 100 unsaid words. John stood tall, his eyes sweeping over the guests who were still trying to process what they had just witnessed. Sarah sat frozen, her face ashen, her eyes wide with disbelief and shame. Mark, beside her, looked like a man who wished the ground would swallow him whole. John felt the weight of the moment, the culmination of all his planning and restraint. He had envisioned this scene countless times in his mind, and now that it had played out, there was nothing left for him here. The betrayal had been exposed, and the truth had burned away the last remnants of his marriage. But before he left, there was one final thing he needed to do. John cleared his throat, drawing the attention of the room once more. His voice, steady and calm, cut through the lingering silence. "Thank you all for coming tonight," he said, the hint of a smile playing on his lips. "It's not every day that we get to celebrate such a memorable occasion." He turned to Sarah and Mark, who were now the focus of every eye in the room. "And to Sarah and Mark," he continued, his tone dripping with sarcasm, "I wish you both the very best in your new life together. It's clear you've worked very hard to build whatever it is you have." The words hung in the air, a final blow delivered with cool precision. The guests exchanged uneasy glances, a few of them nodding in approval of John's parting words. Then, something unexpected happened. Applause. It started as a tentative clap from one corner of the room, but it quickly grew as more people joined in, their applause growing louder, more enthusiastic. It was a recognition of John's bravery, his cleverness, and perhaps a bit of awe at the way he had orchestrated the evening. John's smile widened, but there was no joy in it, just a quiet satisfaction that he had seen this through to the end. He gave a small nod of acknowledgement to the guests, then turned and walked toward the door, his steps measured and sure. The sound of applause followed him, a fitting soundtrack to his exit from the life he had once known. As John stepped outside, the cool night air greeted him like an old friend. He breathed deeply, feeling a weight lift from his shoulders. The stars overhead seemed to shine a little brighter, the world suddenly full of possibilities he had long forgotten. For the first time in a long time, John felt free. He walked to his car, the sound of the party fading behind him, and for a moment he simply stood there looking back at the house where he had once imagined spending the rest of his life. But that life was gone, shattered by betrayal, and in its place was something new, something that was entirely his. John knew the road ahead wouldn't be easy. There would be challenges, moments of doubt, and the inevitable whispers from those who had witnessed tonight's events. But he also knew that he had emerged stronger, more resilient. He had faced the worst, and he had come out the other side with his head held high. As he drove away, John felt a sense of closure settling over him. He didn't look back. There was no need. The chapter was closed, and a new one was waiting to be written. Back at the party, the aftermath of John's revelation rippled through the crowd. Sarah was left to confront the reality of her actions, the judgmental stares of the guests, the whispers that followed her every move. Her world had crumbled in an instant, and the social and personal fallout would be hers to bear alone. Mark, too, found himself an outcast, his reputation in tatters, his future uncertain. In the days and weeks that followed, John became something of a local legend. His story spread, retold with admiration and a touch of envy by those who had been there. He was seen as a hero, a man who had not only survived betrayal, but had turned it into a moment of triumph. And as John began his new life, free from the shadow of deceit, he carried with him the knowledge that he had faced the worst and had emerged victorious. The story ended with a clear moral. Betrayal carries a heavy price, and those who engage in it will eventually face the consequences. But for those who are wronged, there is strength in choosing to rise above the pain, to take control of their narrative, and to emerge stronger on the other side. And that's the end of today's story. If you enjoyed watching justice served and love seeing stories where men rise above betrayal, don't forget to give this video a thumbs up. It really helps the channel grow and brings more stories like this to you. If you haven't already, hit that subscribe button and ring the notification bell so you never miss another tale of triumph. Here on Only Stories About Men, we share powerful stories of men who face challenges, overcome betrayal, and come out stronger on the other side. Thanks for watching, and I'll see you in the next story.